Hi, everyone. It is Colleen Meyer here with Lafaya Mitchell, licensed marriage and family therapist. And we have an amazing event right now where Lafaya is going to talk to us on how to recognize depression in your teen and children. Lafaya, go ahead and take it away.
Okay. So the reason that I was so interested in this particular subject is because I recently met with a group of teens and I asked them, how many of you think that you experienced some depression during these COVID times, right? And it was very interesting because what I know for sure is that a great majority of people out there experience depression in some way, shape, or form during this time. Not saying everyone, but most people they're at least experiencing some form of depression or anxiety. And when I asked the kids this question, then what I noticed is oftentimes the girls are more likely to raise their hands a lot more quickly
Mm-hmm.
than our young men. And and it was interesting because I was like, okay, so I see that none of the young men are raising their hands. Okay, so you
Mm-hmm.
tell me what you think depression is. And I had one of the young men say to me, he said, well, it's like when you're so sad or distraught or upset that you want to kill yourself, or you can't move, or all these different things. And and it just kind of, and I understood that this is what happens. That's why I asked the question. But I
Mm-hmm.
was so shocked at the fact that there was like so little knowledge, because most of the other kids get same consensus, right? And I asked them, I said, did you know that just having like this a strong feeling that you're just tired of this right now, like that is a version of feeling a little bit depressed, especially if you're feeling like that every day. Like, oh my, every day is the same. This is, all this feeling very irritated, frustrated, um, easily agitated by others, all those kind of things. And they were like, oh, well, you know, I have experience with that every day. Right. And so I'm like, okay. And I'm not saying it like, and the way I explain it to them is, I'm not saying it like this, like it's like this huge thing, right? I'm saying to you that when it's present, it's important to recognize what it is. So then at least you can do something about it. Like it doesn't have like this hold over you every day. And you just, and there are things you just, go for a walk, get some vitamin D and, certain things like that, right? But, but I want to kind of give a little bit of like a checklist for people, so that if their kids are experiencing some form of depression, that they're
Mm-hmm.
actually picking up on it and recognizing it, as opposed to feeling very upset, because that's what was happening with a lot of parents, is they're feeling very upset with their children for the way that they're behaving. Like they're like, well, I just don't understand what the problem is, and all those kind of things. I would like for them to better understand it, so then that way they can identify it for what it is, as opposed to calling the child like lazy, or any other, the names that parents like to call their children. But I hear lazy a lot.
Lafaya, it's always fascinated me, especially with my granddaughter, because when she was young, she would ride motorcycles, dirt bikes, and race. She would race motocross, and she would win, and she'd be up there with the boys with her trophy. But something I noticed with young girls, she's not quite there yet, but I noticed with some girls at a certain age, they lose that confidence, that self-efficacy, and become more depressed and have anxiety about things. What do you think is creating that? Is that hormonal? Is that something to do with society? Or, we just came out of COVID, everybody was locked down at home. Where do you think that shift is with both boys and girls? And what do you think causes it?
Okay, I think that for girls in particular, that especially when they're younger, it's easier to compete with the boys. And not saying that we can't, right? Okay,
Mhm.
because I played basketball and I competed with the boys up through like college level. Like I was
Mhm.
I was getting whipped, right? So I'm not trying to say that girls aren't great at things, but we do often have to either work a lot harder. We're not physically made the same as guys. They are
Mhm.
naturally stronger, and and things like that. So I think that just coming to that reality as you get older, like when you get around that age of, I want to say about 13 or so,
Mhm.
14, especially 14 and up, there is a real difference between you and the boys. But when you're a girl, if you're a big tomboy, then it becomes very apparent, because you're out there
Mhm.
still trying to do what the guys are doing, but you can't quite get there, all the time. Not saying now nobody get mad at me, but I'm saying it's just a lot harder. We have to go about it in a different way. Okay, I'll just say it that way. And so, but for girls, I think it's that reality setting in. I think it's just easier in general to be a younger person. So a lot of people will say, and it's actually getting younger and younger that kids are saying this, but before it was around 13 that they would start to say, I just, all of a sudden I'm just not happy anymore. Like
Mhm.
this life is hard. Like they're noticing that, you really do have to work at this life and all that kind of stuff. Now they're starting to say it at like 9 and 10. Like I just started to have a different view, like,
Mm.
right? They're 9 and 10, a different view of the world. Like now I'm just, I'm traumatized by so many things, and that's because there's too much access to
Mm.
very tough to hear and process information. So younger and younger, because due to internet access and all that they have now, they're starting to see things that their little minds aren't really equipped to be ready for yet. Our big minds aren't equipped for some of the stuff that we're hearing out there. So their little no experience having minds are even more traumatized. So I think there's a combination of things. I think that it's hormonal, of course.
Mhm.
We have a shift in how things are working for us hormonally. Of course, that's going to impact something. But then we also have, it's taken into account, like I said, access to information, too much information. Figuring out that not everybody is kind of created as equally as we thought when we were younger. All that kind of stuff contributes.
So it was interesting what you were talking about early when we started the broadcast about um, with some the teenagers, especially the male teenagers, they didn't recognize depression, and you were able to break it down for them and say, "Are you feeling this way?" Yes. So what can parents do to recognize depression in their kids or
Okay, so
teenagers?
one good one, okay, that parents don't typically think about is a kid having a difference in how they're sleeping. So some trouble
Mm,
sleeping, or
mm,
either trouble sleeping or sleeping a lot more than they used to. So if
mm,
there's like something that's really shifted, and again, with COVID, that kind of happened anyway because now there's no, you don't have any place to go. You're not exerting the same amount of energy, so you're not tired as quickly. But what that does is it kind of throws us off, rhythmically. Okay. So trouble sleeping or oversleeping is a big sign. Feeling tired all the time. That's another big sign. Like a lot of times parents will call the kid lazy and all that, but sometimes there is some depression on board. The kid may not even notice. They'll just say, I don't know, I'm just really tired, right? So that's how you know depression is on. The kid can potentially be on board. Lack of desire to do anything. Now, I know that probably sounds like your typical teen sometimes, but lack of desire to do anything, even the things they did used to enjoy. Okay, so they won't,
mm,
and I understand often these days our kids are locked up in their rooms, kind of in their caves, on their
mhm,
computers and doing all that, but they typically lose interest in almost even their favorite clues they'll lose interest in and stuff like that. Um, Irritability that's different from what you've experienced before with them. Irritability, short temper, extra sensitive. All these can be signs of depression. And then you have your standard, the things that people know about, like, kind of easy to, when they cry easily, or, the feelings are really hurt, so much more easily than they used to be, right?
mm.
And things like that. Or even sometimes just having more meltdowns, all that kind of stuff. These can all be signs of depression.
I know that with teenage, I raised two girls, and I know that sometimes a parent can recognize, hey, something's wrong. What is it? And the child or the teen just kind of clams up. Nothing, mom. Nothing, mom. Leave me alone. It's nothing. Or dad. Um, how could you help a parent to kind of get that breakthrough with their teen or child, especially I think a teen more than a child?
Right. So when you're asking what's wrong and they're telling you nothing, then it's really important to kind of help point out certain things that you see that are off, and it's just in carefully. So so when you come to them, first of all, you come to them gently. You don't come to them what's wrong with you, right? Because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
parents will do that. They'll get
Yeah.
frustrated, irritated, and they'll come with that wrong tone. But some of the first things is kind of preparing yourself ahead of time. So we need to kind of lay down a foundation before we talk about what to say. Okay. So one of the most important things to do when your child is misbehaving or not behaving the way they normally do or whatever, right, is
Right.
don't judge. That's like my first thing. Don't judge. So some I hear people say far too often, what's wrong with you? Like, there should be nothing wrong with you. You get everything you need, everything you want. Like, you have no reason to, right,
That's
to
right.
be behaving this way. So it is very important to move out of that way of thinking, right? If I had what you had, and oftentimes we'll make it about us. So if
Mm-hmm.
if I would have gotten what you have, I would have been the happiest kid in the world. I got hardly half of what you get or a quarter of what you get, and you're just not appreciative, right? They make it about lack of appreciation instead of this
Mm-hmm.
kid may be struggling, right? So don't judge. Make sure that you're validating their experiences. So if it's irritability you're dealing with and you see it, then you go to them and you say, have you been feeling a little bit irritable? Because it feels like, right, to me, that you're having like quick reactions, whatever, those kind of things. Or I'm noticing that you're having this go on, right? So then when you come in, you're validating that there's something going on. What is it? What's going on with you? And telling them that it's okay to feel that way. To even sometimes explain or help to give some reasons why that may be happening. Okay. So, you seem a little bit irritable lately. I know that like we've been stuck at home for so long. You haven't been able to see your friends the way you normally would. Some parents are a bit more strict than others. So sometimes kids don't see their friends at all. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I know that these things have been going on, or now we're getting into the reverse, right? I know you're accustomed to not being around people, right? And now you've been just thrown back into school, right? Those kind of but whatever's going on, but you validate whatever experience it may be. You help share it. You help them try to figure out what it might be, and definitely for sure, make sure that you don't avoid the subject. So that's one of the mistakes that parents often make is if they did
Mm-hmm.
notice that their kid is a little bit depressed, they'll say, "Well, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to make them feel bad." Okay. Well, if they're already feeling bad, then you're saying something to them is not going to cause them to feel a certain way. As a matter of fact, if what you say, you feel like it's making them feel bad, they were already set to feel bad in the first place. So you still need to address
Yeah, because I see, you see this on TV all the time where a teen um, takes their life, and the parents, you'll hear from the parents say, I didn't see any signs. Um, it took me by surprise. Can you peel back that onion and kind of tell us, why a person would miss it? Is it because of some of the things that you're saying now, they don't want to get their child upset? Or is sometimes the child really good at hiding it?
Well, you know what? That's a tough one because there's two sides to this. Because sometimes the parents, if they really think about it, they knew. You typically parents know when there's something a little off anyway.
Hmm.
Typically there's some kind of sign in there somewhere. Now, sometimes parents will get too busy and they won't pick up on it, or they'll find themselves irritated about it and they make it about something else, something that it's not. So those are the things that kind of cause us to miss it. So it'd
Hmm.
be probably better to say, I missed that. But I've actually dealt with quite a few parents, after the fact when there was suicide that was completed for their child, and they would say, I did notice that there was something going on, you know, and oftentimes a lot of parents out there will know that there's something going on. They will try to get the help. They will tell people, say, hey, there's something wrong. We need to figure this out. They will, and things like that. And sometimes other people won't know what to do about it because it's such a difficult subject to really, to approach for most people. But I would say that, especially if you feel like there's something wrong, and say you talk to the school principal or counselor or whatever teacher, or the teacher mentions there's something wrong, you say, okay, well, what do I do? Right. Then typically you want to, especially if you feel like your child is suicidal, Okay. You want to make sure that you get them in to see someone, because that's very important. Because when they go in to see therapists, especially, and you make sure that you're taking them in to see a therapist who wants to hear from you as a parent. Okay. This is extremely important. They want to hear from you so that they can find out maybe some of the stuff that the kid's not able to share. Especially when you feel like, hey, I think there's something, they seem a little bit extra sad, or sometimes they may actually say, I don't want to live. Sometimes they may say these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but make sure that you get them in to see someone. If that someone that you take them in to see does not seem to be addressing the matter the way that you see fit, then take them in to see someone else. Very, very important.
When we look at today's environment, and you were saying that kids and teens have much more exposure because of the internet and social media, how much do you feel is the bullying at school or being picked on at school? How much do you think that's affecting depression in kids and teens? Or do you not think they kind of outgrow it as they get into teens? Or do you feel like it's
No. Bullying plays a huge part. And it's not now, bullying is so much. See, this is tough for me too. Bullying is tough no matter where you get it, right?
mm-hmm,
But we notice now that there are more extreme effects on the kids these days. Okay. And the reason why is because the bullying is nonstop nowadays, because
mm-hmm,
people have a ridiculous amount of access to us. When we were younger, people only had access to us while we were there at school. And we didn't carry around cell phones or have all this social media and all this stuff. So there's not much other access. They'd have to call the landline at our homes, right, to continue
mm-hmm,
to
right.
bully us when we got home. This is really
And,
hard
and
for,
we just
you
hang
know,
up on them.
right. It's really hard for bullying to go beyond the school, the schoolyard, right? When we were younger. But now kids are being attacked from everywhere, from all types of platforms on social media, on their cell phones. They're receiving these text messages, all the, and not putting any, saying anything negative about all the different social media out there, but I'm saying that there's a lot of access, and there's a lot of, you can put things out there that don't go away. So if a person, say, teases you right there, there's a certain amount of people that are going to see that, and then it's gone. But when it's recorded, when it's on, when it's put up on these, on these social media platforms, then they're just there, right? They're stuck there until you can have it taken down. And who knows how many people, depending on how tough the situation, right? The worse the situation, typically, the more views, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just now, yeah. Bullying can play a huge part in the depression in kids.
And I think too, this is what I hear. I hear a lot of conversations, with parents and that say, I went to the school to address it with the school. I tried to get a hold of the child's parents. And it seems like that, some of these extreme cases I look at, and you see them on the news or you see them on social media, and I'm just like, I would have pulled my kid out of school and homeschooled them, you know. But is that the answer? Because then they lose that where they can go and socialize and obtain skills that they're going to need later on, which is that interaction with other people. But it's like, where is that? Where's that boundary?
It gets really, it gets really tough, because then you have to look at a bunch of different factors for this. So, if you have a certain situation, then it may be viable for you to take your kid out of school and homeschool. But there are some people out there that they don't have the kind of situation, that they may lose their job, their families may starve, if they pull their, so
Mm,
if they try to homeschool, or kids with, certain issues, they can't be, there's just a certain level of help that you need as
mm,
parents. And if you can't afford it, or if you can't, so it gets really tough when you talk about maybe pulling them from school. Like I said, there are some that can do it. But I mean, for me, um, if I were the parent, then I would do all that I could. Like, I would definitely work with the school. Now, this one is for sure. I would definitely work with the school, and if I didn't feel like they could answer my questions or give me what it is that I need, then I would, I may have to take a couple. But this is me. I'm in a different kind of
mm.
situation too. where I would have to, pull my kid and put him in a different school and figure that part out, or or get extra help with that part. If a parent can do that, I would highly suggest that you do that. If the bullying is to such a strong degree,
Extreme.
right? If
Hmm.
you're hearing about it, if you're hearing about it, then that means there's probably a lot more going on in the background than what you're hearing. So I would say judge it by, if you're hearing just a little, okay, there may not be, it may be, a moderate level of bullying happening. But if you're hearing things and you're seeing things on a daily basis, or even, once or twice a week, then that means there's probably a much larger problem. You're only seeing the tip of the iceberg, because most of the time our children are too ashamed and quite honestly, too unable to recognize what's happening to them as bullying. Well, sometimes they're not able to recognize it as that, because bullying has been portrayed as this thing where, of this big, huge guy is coming and, stealing another kid's lunch money and beating them
Hmm.
up and all that kind of stuff. When in today's day, bullying is on a whole different level. So we have the tiniest little kid bullying a larger child nowadays,
Hmm.
because now you can do it through, now you're that, you have that tech strength, or that social media strength, right? And stuff like that.
And I think too, they're self-conscious, especially when they're little older children or teens, and if somebody's on social media and calling them a name, and then somebody jumps in and somebody else jumps in, and it's horrible, because it's like an attack, and all these people are on board with it. And I can see where if that was me, I wouldn't want to go to school. I,
Right.
and if I'm gonna be honest, if my parents said, well, you have to go, and today, how kids bully today, I probably would have not went. Would have went, like, when they go to work, I would have came back, because it's like you said, when we were kids, you go to school, you come home, and you got from the time you're home to the next morning when you go back to school, you're safe
Yes. Yes. You get a
from all
break.
of this.
Yes.
A break.
Yes. Yes. That's very true. That's very true. And it's tough, because seriously, it's relentless now. And parents
Hmm.
have to start taking these things very seriously. It's important to educate our children. It's important to go into the place of always problem solving. Like, I don't want you to feel punished at all, right? Because now this kid has to stay off of this social media if a kid's on there, right? Like, why should I be punished for what someone else is doing to me? But then you share with them, it's not self-punishment. It's more, you're moving into a space where you're not allowing yourself to have kind of them to have constant access to you, right? So you're actually helping yourself out by just limit your time that you're going to spend on these things, right? And you
Hmm.
start you start to say to them, it has to be really tough to see this. Like, how are we going to deal with this? You can give them all the languaging, things to say and that kind of thing. And if they're not having any breakthrough, and we're not having any breakthrough with the teachers, then, like I said, I like I would have to take it very seriously. And
Hmm.
I would even have to share with the school, I'm not going to send my kid there to get mistreated at your school every day. So either you guys need to figure out something to do about that, or we're gonna they're gonna be home with me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's remarkable how so much has changed, due to the new technology and social media, with depression and anxiety amongst kids and teenagers.
Yeah, I think some of it is that we have to also kind of work on the other side of that,
Hmm.
right? So if they're consistently hearing negative, 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 then as much as we possibly can as parents, then we feed our kids as much positive as we can. We
Hmm.
have to help them. Some of the other stuff, and I mean, this is only if it's not at extreme degree, right? But some of the things we do to kind of combat some of that is to say, you know, happy people don't do that. Like, happy people don't bully. There's clearly something going on with them. Try not to personalize what's their problem. Most of the time, the thing that they're trying to point out about you is something that they don't like in themselves. Different things like that. Or, even if it's like, well, it's a really short kid, being bullied by a really tall kid. Well, they're calling me short all the time, all this kind of stuff, right? Then it'd be like, well, then maybe it's that they have some discomfort with their size. So not necessarily the exact, so it is not exactly the same issue, but usually whatever the person is speaking to is some kind of way they have an issue with that in within themselves, and teaching our kids from that way too can be helpful. But it's a tough situation. I wish that we could just go in and have some kind of modern monitoring that's happening at this point, so that when kids are bullying, that they're placed in the proper environment to learn how to not do that, learn how to respect themselves enough to be able to respect another human being, right? That kind of thing.
So let's quickly go over some of the things that you said in the last 25 minutes. So it would be, and you can add to and correct me if I'm wrong, for parents to, recognize if their sleep patterns change, or if they're sleeping too much or not enough, if they have anxiety, or they're more than normal, being having a negative response to things,
Yeah.
whether angry and then seeking a counselor and making sure that the counselor is interested in what the parent has to say. And if you feel like the counselor is not doing enough for your child, then change counselors. And
Yes,
then,
without hesitation, right? And if you come in and you share with a counselor that your child is suicidal, and there's not automatically day one a suicide contract or some addressing of that specifically, then you probably need to find another counselor that's a little bit more educated in that particular area of work.
and then I had also got was, if it's bullying, keep letting them know that it's not them, and that if it's to the extreme, to take either child out of school and put them in another school, or if a parent has the ability to homeschool that child. Did I miss anything, or is there anything that you want to add to that?
No, I want to take this time to say and give just a kind of a little bit to the parents. I don't want to overwhelm. I just want, if you see any major changes in behavior or mood, pay attention to that. If you, again, and I forgot to mention eating, if they're eating a lot more than they used to, or they're hardly eating at all when they used to be a pretty healthy eater, then that's also something to pay attention to. And then just a couple of other things, just pay attention to their comments, because a lot of times the kids will tell you what's going on with them. So if they're doing a lot of body shaming, or those kind of things, or they feel bad about themselves and their looks or their whatever, then pay attention to those things too, because those are also signs. But yeah, I would say make sure you address it, never avoid and ignore it, right? And if your kid is so irritable that they're like, there's nothing wrong with me, right? Then you can start to share things with them gently. Well, you might want to tell your mood that, because you seem like you're snapping like every few seconds, right? Kind of thing, right? Or every few minutes, like this is not you. So it's just really important to address.
And it reminds me of one of your 4 core strategies, which is, you want to talk, come at this situation with your truest intent, and what are you trying to accomplish here? And it's not to make the child or teen feel worse. It's
No,
for them to open up
right.
and share.
Right. And oftentimes, now be careful, parents, because sometimes parents will get so uncomfortable with their child's discomfort that they'll become frustrated and irritated because of discomfort. And that really truly comes from the fact that you don't want them to feel bad. It makes you feel bad when they feel bad. Okay. So recognize that that's where that response is coming from. And you, if irritation comes up, and you need to deal with that as a parent first before you deal with your child. You should never be coming to your child shaming them. And when I say shaming, because a lot of parents misunderstand what shaming means, when you're saying to them, what's wrong with you? You shouldn't be feeling like that. Like, like, why won't you come out your room? Why won't you do this? Why, instead of doing all of that, then start to, like Colleen was sharing in the Lafaya way, what I call step 3ing it, and responding in alignment with your truest intentions. Your truest intentions are to help your child feel better, not worse. And judging them and and planting in their mind that there's something wrong with them is definitely not going to make them feel better.
And I think, and I think it's always, and this is kind of a cliche, but it's better to be safe than sorry.
Yep. Yep. True story. You may as well ask, even if they're irritable, you may as well ask. At least they know that you care.
I
So,
like that,
yeah.
Lafaya. Well, thank you
Oh,
very much. Oh,
I just wanted to before we
yeah,
close up,
sure.
I did want to bring up that we have our pep party tomorrow.
That's right.
And I always get excited about my pep parties because we've been doing our OPEP, everybody, Parents Empowering Parents program. Um, and we have 3 tiers to that. We go PEP 1, PEP 2, and PEP 3, and each get more advanced in the assistance that we give to the parents as we move along. It's really good. Um, we
Mm-hmm.
we launched the program and we've already had parents like this is like life changing, and I didn't even realize how much so quickly. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been accustomed to all these years working with individual families, individual clients, and now I'm taking the concepts that I've been teaching or working with families and helping them for years, and I'm bringing this into this program, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, it's like night and day. It's making such a huge difference," and I'm super excited about it. So yes, come in so that first of all we can have a good discussion about what people are doing in these new COVID transition times where we're going back into distance learning, going back into the job and all the stresses and
Mm-hmm.
anxiety that come along with that. We're also going to tell you a little bit more about the support that we're offering to parents and the kids out there. So don't forget to join us. Just visit lafayaway.com, which I think is scrolling along the bottom, and you can get more
Mm-hmm.
information about that.
And I put it in the comments also. And since you brought it up, I have to say this. You have been doing the first module or the first part of your series, and the parents that I'm talking to, and we even got a testimonial today. It's on your Facebook page and your Instagram page. But what has it been? 3 weeks?
Yeah,
Two,
we're
three
on week
weeks.
3. Yeah.
This would be week 3 tomorrow, right? 10 o'clock. And for that particular program, and the testimonies that are coming in from people 2 weeks. This would be the 3rd week in that we get in testimonials that people that are making a difference in the lives of their children and their relationship with their children. So Lafayette, that's amazing that you're doing that, and I appreciate that, and I can't wait to see, watch the journey these parents are going on with their children through
Yeah,
the
I'm
Lafayette way.
excited for the parents too because I'm
Me
seeing the
too.
growth. I'm like it already. So I'm like, oh, by the time we get done with this, oh, we'll be
Yeah, wait till
set.
we get done with this. It's going to be amazing. So thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about helping parents identify depression in their teens and adults. Thank you, Lafayette.
Yes. Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
guys.